My great pleasure to be here today. This is part of the Grand Master's interview session, and I'm with most worshipful brother Wayne Joseph Deming, who was our Grand Master in 1970, 1971. My name is very worshipful Bud Cook. I'll be doing the questioning, the interviewing, and our cameraman is most worshipful G. Santascano, who is going to make us look good in this film, that's for sure. Most worshipful, what prompted you to become a Mason?
Well, my family was Masonic oriented. My dad was a Mason. However, he never mentioned that he was a Mason to me. I didn't know his involvement in Masonry. And one time after I got acquainted with my lady friend who became my wife, her father asked me if he thought my dad would sponsor him into the Masonic Lodge. And I told him I don't know. I don't know if he would or not, but I don't know why he wouldn't. But I'll ask him. So I asked my dad, I told my dad he had asked if you would sponsor him into your lodge. And my dad said, "Did he say that?" I said, "Yes, he said that." And that's the last I heard. The next I knew that my father-in-law was wearing a Masonic ring. So evidently my dad did respond to him. So my wife's dad was a Mason, and his dad was a Mason, and my dad was a Mason, and his brother was a Mason. And so I thought that I should be a Mason. And someday I would want to. And I went down to my dad's funeral in 1949, and it was a Masonic funeral for him. And I thought that was real impressive. And so when I came back to Bellingham, I figured someday I would become a Mason. And I had 3 pickup trucks, and I had the problem with getting gas for them all the time. And so I made an arrangement with a gasoline station to fill the tanks when they came in and bill me by the month. And he said he would do that. So one evening about 5 o'clock, I drove into that station with my own pickup, and the owner of the station came out dressed in a tuxedo. And I said, "By gosh, I picked the right gas station when I get service with a man in a tuxedo." I said, "You have to explain that." And he said, "Well," he said, I'm going to a Masonic lodge, and I have to be in a tuxedo." I said, "Oh, you're a Mason?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, someday I'm going to put in my application." He said, "Just a minute." He went inside the gas station and came out with an application. He said, "Here, make this out and give me a check for $100 and have it back to me by Friday, because I'm going to go to Lodge and I'll present it to Lodge Friday." So I talked it over with my wife if we could afford $100, and she said yes. So that I made it out, and I took it back, and I became a Mason.
Interesting story. That's excellent. That's excellent. What was the theme for your year as Grand Master?
Communication.
What caused you to pick that theme?
Well, realizing the days that I was interested in that, there was no cell phones going around. Computers were scarce. There was just no communication between lodges. Even in a city, there was no communication between one and the other. When one lodge was going to confer a degree, well, they didn't tell another lodge to get there. Communications were very, very slim. And districts didn't know what one district was doing for the other. We had meetings of groups that didn't communicate with one another. And I just felt that communication was most important, that we knew what the other lodges were doing, what their problems were, what the answers to cured their problems, and just more communication between Masons and lodges.
Excellent. What were some of the major goals that you wanted to pursue during your term?
Mainly communication. That was I felt was the most important part of being a Mason, was communicating with the other Masons.
What were the challenges of your term?
the challenges were to make my ideas important enough to the Masons to have them adopt what I was trying to get over to them. That was the challenge, and the challenge was to make the meetings that we had, the district meetings, more interesting, that would draw the crowd, to draw the people there, draw the Masons there, to get the communication rolling. That was the main intention.
I understand. What are your favorite memories as a Grand Master?
Well, the many Masons and people that I met, that I would not be able to meet them any other way than in a lodge. And the memories that I had of those brothers that would recognize me, shake my hand. One of the most important things that I felt when the Grand Master walks into a room, the brothers stand up without the rap of the gavel. That's the customary thing. And I went to a meeting, and frankly, one brother was disgruntled with me because I had appointed a deputy that he didn't think was adequate, so he would not stand up. And he was the secretary of the lodge. And everybody knew that he didn't stand up. Everybody rose without the rap of the gavel. And so I made a comment about that in my talk to the lodge, to the district, that you don't stand up because of the man, you stand up because of the position. The position of Grand Master, just like the President of the United States. You toast him at our meetings. Toast the President of the United States, not for the man. You might not like the President. You might not even agree with the President. You might not have been of that party. Still, you stand up and toast the President. You toast the position. And so when you stand up, you stand up for the position of being the Grand Master. And I said, I had an experience. It was about 2 or 3 months after I was Grand Master, after the next Grand Master took office, and I walked into a meeting that was not there was nobody in the east at the time. There was no presiding officer in the building, but in the room, but the lodge room was full. And I walked into that meeting. This was 2 or 3 months after I was Grand Master, and everybody stood up. And I thought, sure, the Grand Master came in after me, would follow me, because I was walking across the lodge room to find a seat. And I turned around and there was nobody there. And then they started to applaud. And all I could do at the time was give the Grand Hating sign of distress. Because I was distressed. I was embarrassed that these brothers would stand up, and I was not Grand Master anymore. And I gave the Grand Hating sign of distress, and I thanked everybody for doing that, and I told them I'd appreciate it, and I went and sat down.
That's a great
But I was kind of embarrassed.
Excellent memory. Excellent memory. Does the man make the office, or the office make the man?
That's a difficult question to answer because I don't really know what the question is. I'm sure that the man, when he is installed Grand Master, doesn't know the obligation that he has when he says that he will attend to the code and do what the code says. He doesn't know the extent of the obligation. And so I would assume that the responsibility of being the Grand Master gets to that person, gets to that Grand Master after he's installed, after he realizes, after he gets a letter asking a permission to do a certain thing. The Grand Master has to make up his mind whether that fits the code, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, and he has to be able to give a reason why he has that answer. So I would assume that the position makes the man responsible for what he has obligated himself to.
What is it like being Grand Master?
Well, it's certainly an honor to be in that position, to be elected by the brothers. You know that the brothers are agreeable to your conduct. They have an impression that you are indeed a Mason, have obligated yourself in your lodge and as a master or deputy, if that's so. I believe that you feel that responsibility after you have obligated yourself and experienced some of the problems that you didn't realize were there before you were Grand Master, and that you realize that you have further obligations that you really thought you were going to have.
Who was the greatest help to you as Grand Master?
The Grand Secretary.
And want to expound on that? Who was the Grand Secretary at that time?
Grand Secretary was Right Worship Brother Edward L. Bennett, who was the Grand Secretary, and I was involved in the Grand Lodge as a master, and the deputy when he was first appointed to that to fill in the remainder of the secretary that retired, and then he was elected to receive that. So I was present in the Grand Lodge operation before he was Grand Secretary, and then after he was Grand Secretary. So he grew into this part as well as I grew into the part myself. So that association drew us together, and he became a very good friend of mine. His family, he had his son and a daughter, and they became good friends of me and my wife, and we traveled together and we associated each other. We stayed at each other's homes, and so he just became a great Mason as far as any Mason could be, and so I enjoyed that association.
Okay. In our prior conversation before we started filming this, I could tell that your wife had played an important part in your career, and our picture is just behind you above. Did you want to explain what your wife did and how she worked for the Grand Lodge offices as well?
Well, she was a secretary here in Bellingham, and so she knew how to type, and she knew how to take dictation, and she knew how to take shorthand. So when we would go to Grand Lodge, the office, the girls in the office were there, but they were busy doing this and that. So she offered her services to the committees, the Jurisprudence Committee and the Finance Committee. When they made out the reports, she would type them up, and she would take shorthand and type out what she'd taken. And so she became pretty well thought about. When Grand Lodge came about, why the Grand Secretary said, "You come in here and do these things." And so she got acquainted with the office crew. And when we moved to Olympia for my work, why, she offered to go to Tacoma and fill in after Grand Lodge to take care of some of the business that had accumulated there. And so she did that, and they appreciated her efforts in that regard.
Yeah, outstanding. What important Masonic changes did you see in your career as a Mason?
Pardon?
What important Masonic changes did you see in your career as a Mason?
I don't know how to really answer that question. The change I see is attendance. We used to have a bumper crowd of people that would come to the meetings. If we had a degree, why, the lodge room would be most full to see somebody receive the third degree. But now the attendance is, we have 5 or 6 on the sidelines where if we feel lucky about it. It's discouraging that the brothers are too busy doing their work at home or computers or whatever else is drawing their attention. They not paying attention to their lodge. I don't believe that they have really realized what the cable tow was about.
Okay. We had such a good conversation prior to this filmed interview. Your biography was written by Worshipful Brother Marky Anway, your secretary of your lodge at that time. He did a beautiful job, and you had some very good comments about that man.
Well, Mark Anway was a transplant Mason from Iowa, where he was made a Mason in Iowa. He affiliated with Bellingham Bay 44, and the year that I was master of the lodge, the secretary that we had decided to retire, and so he said that he would not be the secretary again. So we elected Mark Anway to be the secretary. He was a typesetter for the Bellingham Herald, and so he knew how to type, and he knew how to listen, and so he became the secretary. And and I became the master. I always assumed that the master taught the secretary how to be the secretary, and I told Mark Anway that's what I did. And so Mark said, I knew how to be secretary before you were master. So that was a going concern of both of us. We were both good friends. We associated with each other. He was the editor of the Northwest Masonic News here, and I got involved in that, helping him do that. And so we associated together, our families, and his son now is a member of Bellingham Bay 44. And when I was master, he was a little child, but now he's just like his dad.
That's neat. That's good. Is there anything that sticks out to you which we have not discussed yet that you would like to discuss?
Well, we maybe discussed about the cornerstones and dedication of the temple. I was in the right place at the right time. I believe I had 10 cornerstone laying, and each one of them were outstanding, well attended, and well appreciated by the local masons that were there. I even got involved in a cornerstone in British Columbia. I was well acquainted with the Grand Master up there, and he wanted me to be part of the cornerstone laying up there that they had. And so I became just a small part in that ceremony. When I was on the Alaska trip, we had a lodge up there that built a building that was a lodge under dispensation. And it asked me to fly over there and make sure that the building that they had built was adequate for a Masonic temple. So they came and got me on a private plane. We flew in there, and I approved the building for occupancy as a Masonic lodge. And so when I went back up there in the fall to attend Cordova Lodge, that I couldn't get there because of the weather before, then they flew me in there, and I laid the cornerstone of that building. I dedicated the building. So I laid the cornerstone and dedicated the building in Alaska. So that association, it just was an outstanding, as far as I can remember, of the cornerstone laying and the dedication of the buildings. I believe I dedicated 4 temples when I was a Grand Master. It's just outstanding attendance at those meetings, and worthwhile to Masonry as well as to the district itself.
Most Worshipful, what message would you like to send to the Masons of today?
Well, I like to tell the Masons that Masonry is a destination in your life. It is something that you want to reach out for. You want to improve yourself. You want to improve yourself as a being, as a human being. You want to be accepted in society. I believe the teaching of Masonry will teach you that if you let it teach you, but you have to adopt it, you have to attend, you have to let the lessons of masonry enter your life. If you just read them over and say that's for somebody else, then it won't do you any good. But if you take that to heart, take the lessons of masonry to heart, it'll make the destination in your life worthwhile.
Most Worshipful Deming, I want to thank you in the name of the Grand Lodge and also myself. I want to honestly tell you, the conversation that you and I had before this, and we're going to have afterwards, you have honestly touched my heart. And I want to thank you in the name of the Grand Master and the people who are in charge of this project for helping us complete this oral history. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I appreciate your thanks. But I should thank masonry, because masonry is the most important part. And so I really thank masonry for entering my life and allowing me to become the Grand Master. And it was probably an unearned honor that masonry has given me, and I will certainly remember that forever.
Outstanding. Good.